Good morning. Welcome to IPM Works e-learning modules. My name is Ramon Albages from the Agrotechnic Center and University of Lleida. This video is part of Module 2, Plant Health Risk, Challenges and Policy Context in the European Union. And I will present the chapter Challenges for Plant Health in the Present, Pest Resurgence and Emerging Risks. This is the index. We will give some definition first, then we'll talk about mechanism of pest resurgence, the causes of the pest resurgence, pest characteristics and pest resurgence risks, pest resurgence and EU Green Deal, and finally some examples of resurgent pests. Some definition. Pest resurgence is the rapid reappearance of a pest population in injurious numbers when it was previously under control. Pest emergence, the appearance of new pest problems not previously existing or not perceived as such. Pest reemergence, the periodical reappearance of a pest problem. Mechanism of pest resurgence. We can see the module number 1 when we presented a scheme about the biotic and abiotic relationships in agroecosystems. And the disruption of any of these mechanisms can be the cost of an increase in population on epidemics of a disease or a weed or a pest, a herbivore pest. Which are these changes? First, some changes in competition. Here is the symbol of competition. Here, the crop and the weeds compete. Herbivores, pathogens, and herbivores compete. Predators, entomopathogens, and so on compete. So we can have some changes in this biotic relationship of competitions, but also some changes in down-top mechanism. So here, down top, the relationship between the crop and the herbivore, the crop and the pathogen. All these changes, host crop and Phytophagous arthropod on host crop and plant pathogen, can lead to the pest resurgence. And the third mechanism is top-down mechanism. So the mechanisms that regulate herbivores and pathogens by natural enemies or by the antagonist of pathogens. Also, we can have some modification in abiotic conditions, temperature, humidity, and rainfall, and this can also lead to pest resurgence. Let's talk about now some causes of pest resurgence. This is the index of causes we will mention. Changes in agricultural technology, pesticides, invasive species, climate change, and commercial conditions. Let's see some changes in agricultural technology. No or low tillage. This is sometimes the cause of the pest resurgence. Direct sowing, crop rotation intensification, cover crops, fertilization, mainly fertilization with nitrogen, planting or harvesting dates, and crop phenology. These changes in crop phenology can also be a cause of pest resurgence. New species or new strains of Phytophagous, arthropods, plant pathogen, and weeds. Availability of more precise identification tools. Perhaps some years ago, we could not identify the pest. Now we are able to identify. Also, some changes in pest control techniques. If we talk about more concretely with pesticides, we can have pest resistance in pests, in pathogens, and weeds. We need to apply to increase the pesticide dose, and this is lead to a less abundance of natural enemies or antagonists, and so more increase in pathogens and weeds and arthropods pests. Sometimes the pesticides are the cause of hormesis. Hormesis is the phenomenon that the pests, when are submitted to sublethal doses, they experiment an increased rate of population increase or disease incidence. As I said before, reduced abundance of natural enemies or antagonists, or reduced competition of other weeds. The pesticides affect sometimes the plant quality, increased plant growth, increased plant attractiveness for pests, or reduce plant defense. The pesticide banning, especially in the European Union, lead to we have less and less number of pesticides available for application. And this causes less pesticide rotation and more risk of having pesticide resistance. Invasive species. International increase in international trade leads to have more and more new pest species or strains in our crops. Climate change, new abiotic conditions in an area, new pest distribution areas, new plant hosts. We need models, new models to predict the increase of new pests and the new pest distribution areas due to climate change. And also, you will see probably changes in the efficacy of pest control techniques due to climate change. Also, the commercial condition can lead to modify the action thresholds. For instance, changes in food price or changes in control cost, and this can cause to have changes in the action thresholds. We can ask ourselves, is resurgence mostly linked with the mentioned factors and with certain pest characteristics? For instance, high increase rates, pest resurgence, and EU Green Deal. Changes in pesticide characteristics and their uses may lead to resurgence of farmer secondary pests. Let's see some examples. For instance, changes in phenology of maize. We are changing the phenology, the harvesting and the sowing dates. Here you can have when we monitor some trip pests, you can see that this is the evolution of these trips in late sown fields. And you can see that we have more trips. But in late or in early, we had the same amount of aeolotrips, another trips, but a predatory trips. So with the late sown maize, we have more trips and the same predators. This can lead to have more trips, more trip pests as consequence of changing the sowing date. Here you can have the entrance of a new bacterial disease caused by Xylella fastidiosa in several EU agricultural areas and crops. The origin is in America, but this bacteria has hundreds of cultivated wild and wheat plants in agro and natural ecosystems. Several Amipteran insects are vector of this bacteria. For instance, Philaenus spumarius in EU, and Philaenus spumarius is present in many European countries. Let's see some risk factors that can cause the dispersal of the disease. Presence of amount of inoculum source, susceptible hosts, presence and amount and effectivity of vectors, and plant preference of vectors and Xylella fastidiosa subspecies. All these factors can cause an increase in the incidence of this disease. Some examples of resurgent pests. Let's see some characteristics of weeds that can cause the resurgence of some weeds, which are closely associated with the crops. For instance, winter annual crops are more frequent in crop rotations dominated by winter annual crops. Diversifying the crop rotations will result in a diversified wheat flora without dominating wheat species. If crop rotations become less diversified, the wheat flora will shift gradually towards a wheat flora with the same characteristics as dominating crops in the rotation. Resurgence of weeds following changes in the crop rotation is due to the existence of a wheel seed bank. Let's see an example of weeds, of a resurgent weeds, Amaranthus palmeri. Here you can see a picture of weeds with some Amaranthus. The origin is southwestern North America, here in Mexico and California. The host of these Amaranthus, summer crops like maize and soybean and rural environments. Let's see rural environment, not crop environment, not only agricultural environments, but also rural environments. Now you can see here the EPO distribution area. And you can see here, it's Amaranthus is present here, also in Italy, also in eastern parts of the Mediterranean. And in Northern Europe, it's only transient. It's not established. The mechanism of dispersal, seeds, machinery, and bird feed. The birds can eat the seeds of this plant, of Amaranthus palmeri, and disperse through long distances. Damages. The reduction of crop yield and increased management costs. We need to apply more herbicides. Which are the risk factors? The high frequency of maize and soybean in the crop rotation system in many EPO countries. This is a risk factor. This can facilitate the establishment of Amaranthus palmeri once the field has become contaminated. You can see here some information sources of pest resurgence. Okay, thank you very much.